What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Game Night YouTube channel. Today's video, guys, I'm doing a tutorial of the game 20 Strong by Chip Theory Games. This is a very, very cool dice and card game, and I want to give a shout out, first and foremost, to my buddy Troublebaker. He sent me this copy of the game along with the expansion, so huge shout out and thank you to Trouble. Really appreciate you, dude. I'm loving this game. It is really cool. I wouldn't have even known about this game otherwise if it wasn't for you. So yeah, thank you so very much. And I can teach all of you guys how to play the game. So, and also there's going to be playthroughs coming in the future too, just so you know. But in today's video, we're just going to go through a tutorial of the game and maybe a couple rounds to teach you how to play the game. So the game comes in this nice sturdy box right here. It's by Chip Theory Games. Man, all their stuff is super high quality. It says age is 14 plus. Takes about 30 to 40 minutes to play, and it is a one-player game. The box contents, you get one heavy-weighted chip, which is this chip up this way. Of course, it's a Chip Theory game. You got to have a chip with it. You get a magnetic chip holder, which is this little guy right here that the chip magnetizes to. Really cool. It also comes with 20 custom dice. So you've got 17 of these colored dice up this way that you're going to be using to attack enemies in the game. And then you've also got these 3 stat dice down this way that it comes with. It comes with a rule book, which is this little guy right here. So it tells you about the general rules of play for the base game of 20 Strong. It's got all the information in there. It's got a little icon chart on the back that tells you what all the little icons mean, which is really useful. And it also comes with the Solar Sentinels deck, which contains 1 deck box, 1 rulebook, and 64 PVC cards. So it's going to come with this right here. Solar Sentinels will be included in this base game box of 20 Strong. And essentially there are different decks of cards that you can use to play 20 Strong, and Solar Sentinels comes with the base game. There's also a couple of other expansions that I have that Trouble was kind enough to send over. There is a Too Many Bones version of the game, so instead of using the Solar Sentinels deck, you would replace it with this deck right here. You would still use the dice and the little chip counter up this way, but everything else you would use these cards for this expansion. And there's also one other one that I have here. It's called it's Hoplomachus Victorum. I believe this is another game from Chip Theory Games. I haven't personally played it, but this is sort of like their 20 Strong version of Hoplomachus Victorum right here. And yeah, so you can choose to play with any of those. I believe there's another one coming out right now too. The name of it is eluding me, but you could probably check their website to get in on that, because I think there's some sort of crowdfunding type situation going on for that right now where you could back the game, if I'm not mistaken. But today we're going to go over the Solar Sentinels version of the game. That's the deck that we're going to focus on here. So I've got all of that stuff laid out on the table already. We'll set the box and everything else off to the side, and we'll go over the rest of the components. So as mentioned, you get 20 dice. You get your 3 stat dice, and then you get your 17 combat dice that you're going to use to fight against enemies with. You're going to get a big old deck of enemy cards here. And as mentioned on the box, these are PVC cards. They're like plastic. They're very durable. You could literally get them wet, I'm pretty sure, and they'd probably be perfectly fine because they're just plastic. They have a really cool like red foil on them, which is beautiful. Also, some of the enemies, all the enemies pretty much, they have this like these red foil accents on them. Oh, it looks so good. It looks beautiful. Awesome stuff. So yeah, you've got this deck of 45 enemy cards here, and we're going to go over all of that stuff in just a moment. You also get these 3 hero cards. So these are your characters that you get to choose from when you start the game. You've got 3 on one side. You've got the Valkyrie Mark 7. You've got Galahad the Lancer, Pike Master Orlo, and then if you flip them over, you have 3 other ones. You've got Astral Scout Raven, Beckett Sun Forger, and you've got Stellar Blade Isolde right here. And they all have their own unique set of stats right here, and then they'll all each have their own unique ability that you can use. Cool. So for this example, I am going to use the Valkyrie Mark 7 here. So we're going to set them down this way, and we'll set the other 2 cards off to the side. And now we'll go ahead and go over the rest of the components before we set up our character. So it's also going to come with this stack of mission cards, and it comes with 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 mission cards right here. And these are little objectives that you're going to have to complete as you play through the game. So it'll add some challenge to the game. It's worth noting too, if you're a newcomer to the game or you want an easier variant of 20 Strong with the Solar Sentinels variant of the game, you can choose not to use these, but I highly recommend it. These are really cool. Maybe the first couple games just to kind of get the feel of the game, you'll play without these, but adding these in definitely adds to the challenge for sure. And then last but not least, guys, for the components, we've got these 4 boss cards over here. And man, that red foil is just popping on these. That looks so cool. Hopefully my light is catching that for you guys so you can see that. They are so sick. So yeah, these are the 4 bosses that you're going to get in the game. And that's basically the goal of the game, is to reach the boss and defeat the boss. You've got the Swarm Lord, you've got the Hive Monarch, the Mother Spore, and the Alpha Beast. Really, really cool stuff. And essentially, the basic premise of the game, the basic lore of the game, is that you are one of these heroes that's trying to save the planet from this incoming horde of aliens, essentially. So there's aliens coming to invade, and you're trying to essentially save the planet from this incoming horde of enemies. It also comes with, in the Solar Sentinels box, it comes with this little rule book right here too, and it's got, if we unfold it here, it's going to have all the rules, all the special rules for this version of the game here. Tells you about winning and losing, how to set it up. It's got the game layout down here. It tells you about your different heroes, so on and so forth. If you flip it over, it's got some more rules here. Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. And it's also got this cool little synopsis down here that I can read you that gives you a little bit more info about the lore. It says, in Earth's future, humanity has harnessed the power of the sun. Harvesters sent to the solar surface have siphoned the stellar body's excess plasma, allowing it to be channeled into a variety of groundbreaking technologies. Among its most potent uses is as the power source of a new breed of plasma-based personal weapons. The fighting force who wields these weapons is known as the Solar Sentinels. So your heroes that you're playing as, you are the Solar Sentinels. It says the Earth is in crisis. The Sentinels are humanity's last line of defense against an encroaching alien horde, which has set up a base beneath the lunar surface. Even now, the remaining surviving members of this elite corps have embarked on a last-ditch assault on the moon, hoping their surprise attack will destroy the horde before the aliens can launch their final invasion of Earth. Cool stuff. I love alien stuff. This is right on my alley. If you're into that, this theme is definitely going to be right up your alley too. And if you're not into the alien theme, remember, there's also other themes for the game. You can get the Too Many Bones version, which is, if you've played Too Many Bones, I have a playthrough tutorial on the channel. You can go check that out if you're not familiar with it. It's got a more fantasy sort of theme to it that we all know and love. And then Hoplomachus Victorum, like I said, I haven't actually played this one, so I'm not entirely sure what the theme is, but it looks like it's some kind of dark, creepy theme by this skull on the front of here. So you've got that. If you want to, play a different theme of the game. But yeah, the Solar Sentinels theme, very, very cool, and it's going to come in the box as mentioned earlier. So that is all of the stuff, guys. That is all of the components that you're going to get in the game, in the base game of 20 Strong. And now we're going to actually get into the nitty-gritty of how to play the game. So let's first go over our Solar Sentinel here, our hero. It's got some stats on the game, or on the card rather. So you've got your name of the card up here, Valkyrie Mark 7, and then it'll have this little six-sided star icon. This basically means that you can use it in other versions of the game. So Valkyrie Mark 7 can actually be used in the Too Many Bones version of 20 Strong. And then some of these guys, they're not going to have that icon. Let's see, there's probably one over this way, like Pike Master Orlo. They don't have that little icon, so that means that they can only be used in 20 Strong. You can only use this character in 20 Strong, and typically that's because their particular ability is grounded in the base rules of Solar Sentinels, and it's not going to translate over into one of the other expansions. But if they have the symbol, you can use it in the other versions. Then over here on the left side of the card, it's got the stats for this particular hero. It's got their health shown here with the little red heart. It's got, this is their strategy number. This is how many times you can activate the strategy phase, which we'll get into. And then this is their recover number down at the bottom. And that's how many dice you're going to recover after you've rolled them. And of course, we'll get into that as well. And then last but not least, other than the really amazing artwork, the artwork in the game is incredible. You've got the effect or ability for that particular hero. In this case, for Valkyrie Mark 7, it's Adaptive Armor, which says, when you select Valkyrie Mark 7 during the game setup, increase your stat dice by a total of +2. So I've already got my stat dice set up over here to 3, 2, and 2 as shown on the card. So with Adaptive Armor, we can increase our stats by a total of 2. So I'm going to give Valkyrie Mark 7 an extra stat point here in our blue die, which is the strategy number. That's how many strategy turns you could take. And then for our green die down at the bottom, our recover die, I'm going to set that to a 3 as well, so we can recover 3 dice instead of 2. Okay, cool. So we've got our character set up. Now let's go over the enemy cards. So the enemy cards are going to have a little bit of information on them that's going to differentiate them from one another, namely their name at the top, of course, and then their level. You'll either have level 1 enemies or you'll have level 2 enemies. There's no level 3, no level 4, just level 1 or level 2. That is it. Also, here, this is a perfect example. There's going to be enemies that are non-mandatory, which are in yellow. And then there's going to be mandatory enemies, which are in orange and also have this sort of like caution hazard lines on the right side of the card. Those are mandatory. Yellows are non-mandatory. And they're going to have some other stats on the card, like their health with this little red blood drop and how much damage they do in this little 4-pointed ninja star looking icon down this way. So the Crater Fly, he's got 6 HP and he does 1 damage in combat. In the top half of the card, it's going to have an effect for the card. And in the bottom half, it's going to have a reward or an item or loot, whatever you want to call it. It's like a reward item that you get when you defeat that particular enemy. And there are a few different types of effects and a few different types of rewards, and we'll go over those now. So if it's got this little symbol, that's like a little, it almost looks like a little location symbol. If you look on like a Google Maps or something, it's got like this little upside down sort of arrow looking thing that's rounded at the top. That means that it's a continuous effect that happens during the entire battle. So as long as this guy is alive, that effect is going to take place. And then there's other effects. There are effects like this one right here. This is an after effect symbol, and then a special effect symbol. So we'll go over those. So those are the 3 different types. You've got the during effect. This happens during battle whenever this enemy is alive. Then you've got the after effect symbol, which are 2 little arrows pointing to the right. This is going to happen after the battle is done. So after the encounter phase is done and you're done fighting, or the engagement phase rather, once that's done, you're done fighting, this after effect is going to activate, and it's going to activate whether this enemy is alive or has been defeated. It's going to activate no matter what. And then last but not least, we've got this little star icon right here, and that means that it's a special ability or special effect, and you'll just read the text and it'll tell you when it activates. Like in the case of the spider pus here, it says when defeated, if not the first enemy defeated, this engagement, yada, yada, yada. So it's when it's defeated. So it's going to tell you a specific time that effect will activate, essentially. So those are the 3 different types of effects that monsters can have, and then they can have different types of loot. So there are 3 different types of loot as well. So we've got one of them here, and we've got another one here. And let me pull out the third one real quick. See if we can find one. There we go. Okay, so they can have 3 different types of rewards that you can get from enemies when you defeat them. The first one is going to be a continuous effect. It'll have a little infinity symbol. You'll put this in your item slots, and you can just keep that as long as you want, and that item will take effect for the entirety of the game. And you can decide if you'd like to get rid of it if you want to, and if you don't, you just get to keep it forever. Then they have this little lightning bolt symbol, and these are instant rewards. Whenever you defeat an enemy with this icon, you'll instantly get the reward right in the middle of battle. As soon as you defeat them, you'll get this reward from them. In this case, you would recover 2 dice. That's a really good one. And then last but not least, for the item rewards is this little down arrow. And you'll use this as a one-time use. So you'll keep it with your items in your item stash. And then whenever you decide to use it, you'll discard the item. And then you'll get whatever the effect of the item is right there. So those are the 3 different types of items that you can get from the enemies. It's also worth mentioning too, some of the enemies will have this little icon right here. And that is going to be, it's going to be bad. If it has a plus and it's got a skull, that means that after you activate this enemy, you'd have to activate another enemy. And if the other enemy that you activate also has a skull, you activate another one. So it can keep chaining, and you can eventually wind up with a bunch of enemies in play, and it can get pretty nasty. So you're going to want to try to strategize and look out for that. Cool. So now we're going to set up the enemy deck now that we know about all the information on the enemy cards. So you'll have these 45 enemy cards. You'll shuffle them up, and you're going to deal them out into piles of 15 cards. So we'll get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. So this is going to be our first pile, and these are called combat stacks or combat piles. So we'll put 1 here, then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. This is our second stack. And then, of course, the last stack is also going to have 15 cards in it. Now, you can put these stacks face up, but if you put them face up, sometimes the cards will kind of shift, and you'll be able to see what's underneath. And I don't like that. So I like to put them face down, and then I flip over the top card of each stack face up. That way you can't see what's underneath. There we go. Because that will definitely influence your decision making throughout the game. Cool. So now that we've got them set up, now you can see we've got a level 2 enemy. It's a non-mandatory enemy because it's yellow, a level 1 non-mandatory enemy, and then a level 1 mandatory enemy. So whenever you go into the activation phase, which we'll get into in just a little bit, you'll have to activate this enemy first. And I'll explain that in just a moment. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's lay out our mission. So if you decide to play with the missions, and again, it's optional, but I do recommend it, you're going to shuffle up the mission deck. And I believe there are 12 of them. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Yep, there are 12 missions. You're going to lay out 4 of them to start. And then you're going to lay them from left to right. And then you're going to choose one to get rid of. Okay, so just for the sake of the tutorial, we're just going to pick a random one. Let's just say that we're like, yeah, we read this one. We think it's too hard and we want to get rid of it. We'll just discard it back to the pile here. And then you'll slide these over, keeping them in order. And you'll always start with the mission on the left and have to work your way from left to right as you make your way through the mission. So like for this one, quantity over quality, it says defeat 6 level 1 enemies. So we'd have to defeat 6 of these enemies that are level 1. Once we do that, we would flip this card over and then we'd be able to move on to the next one in the sequence. Now, it's worth mentioning, you do not have to complete these missions here. You don't have to. But if you don't, for each mission that you don't complete, when you reach the boss at the end of the game, you're going to add one of these enemies to the boss encounter for each of these missions that you didn't complete. So let's say we got a couple of them completed here, and then we got to the boss at the end of the game. It says that he gets plus 3 skulls. So you would add 3 enemies to his fight, to his encounter, and we would have to add an extra 4th enemy for this mission that we didn't complete down this way. So it's totally up to you if you want to complete the missions. Again, you don't have to, but it is advisable because it'll make that boss fight at the end of the game a little easier. And maybe sometimes you actually do want to just fight one extra enemy because it might be better than completing one of the missions. It's always just going to matter what the current game state is, and it'll add a bunch of replay value and give you different decisions each time you play the game, which is really, really neat. So now that you've got all your missions set up and you've got your combat stack set up, you've got all your dice set up here, you're pretty much ready to go. Now, last and probably most importantly, are the dice. Let's talk about the dice. So you've got 17 combat dice right here, and from strongest to weakest, you've got the red die, which is your strongest die, and this die is going to have, which is kind of cool, it's got these 6 little pips around this little like circle symbol on each side, and that means that all 6 sides of this die are hits. Now, let's go over the different icons for the dice real quick, so this will make more sense to you. The dice can have a miss symbol, which is if it's just an open, empty circle like this. If it's got the little plus sign star in the middle, that means it's a hit. It does 1 damage. And if it's got the plus sign star symbol with the little like loop going around it, that means that it's a crit. It's a critical hit and it does 2 damage. So on this red die here, you only get 1 of them. It is the strongest die. It's got the 6 little pips to show that all 6 sides are hits. It's got 5 normal hits and then it's got 1 crit. And every single die has 1 crit on one of its sides, on one of its faces. Then moving down in the line, the next strongest dice are the purple dice. And you'll see that they have 5 little pips going around the circle, which means that 5 sides are hits. So 4 of them are normal hits, and then 1 is a crit, and then 1 side is a miss. And then for blue, you got 4 sides that are hits. So 3 normal hits and 1 crit and 2 misses. For the green, you get 3 sides that are hits, 2 normal hits, 1 crit, and then 3 misses. And then the weakest of the dice are the yellow dice that have these 2 little pips on them, and you'll get 1 regular hit, a crit, and then 4 sides are misses, but 2 hits in total for those. And that's going to factor in which dice you want to roll whenever you're combating enemies, of course. Cool. So now that we've got all of that out of the way, now we can get into the flow of the game. So we're going to go through the flow of a round, and I'll kind of show you guys how that works. I'm not going to play through a full game. Just heads up, I will do full playthroughs of the game in future videos. But to not make this video too long, we're just going to go over a couple rounds of the game so you can see the flow of a round. So you're going to have the activation phase first of all, and that's when you activate one of the enemies from these combat stacks here. Now, If there's a mandatory enemy like this one in orange with the caution lines on the side, you have got to activate this enemy. You can't choose one of the other ones. If this guy wasn't here and it was all yellow enemies, let's see if we can find a yellow. Of course, I'm going to draw all mandatory enemies. There we go. If they were all yellow, you'd get to choose which one of those you want to do because they're non-mandatory enemies. But in this case, we've got a mandatory enemy here, so we have to activate him. And activate just means that we're going to have to put him down here in this battle area, and we're going to have to get into an engagement and combat with him this round. So when you move him down, you'd flip the next card over, and he's got a plus and a skull symbol, which means we have to add or activate another one of the enemies, and we flipped over another mandatory enemy, so we have to activate this one. So we put him down here, flip this card over, but you'll notice he does not have a skull symbol like this guy does, so that's it. We are done with the activation. These are the two enemies that we're going to have to fight in this engagement. Cool, so now we're going to move on to the engagement, where there's a couple different phases here. There's a strategy phase and then the resolve phase, and there's a couple steps in each of those phases. So first of all is the strategy phase. The strategy phase, we're going to be able to repeat this phase as many times as our strategy stat allows us to. So we've got a 3 on our blue die for our strategy stat, so we can repeat the strategy phase 3 times in this round. And the strategy phase consists of 3 different steps. Commit dice, which is when you choose which dice you want to roll, and then you roll the dice, and then last but not least, you apply those dice to enemies. So we're going to go through like a quick little example of how that would work. It's also important to note too, you're definitely going to want to read the effects on these enemies and what items you could potentially get from them, and also check their health and how much damage they're going to inflict. So let's go over that. So this guy has a during effect, which means that it's going to last during the entire combat, this Parablight guy. It says each enemy can have only 1 die color applied to them. That's gnarly. So if we want to hit these enemies, we can actually only apply 1 die of each color to them. That's pretty frustrating. So we're probably going to want to kill him first if possible. And it's worth noting too, once you defeat an enemy that has a during effect, anytime you defeat an enemy, you turn them sideways, and the during effect is immediately, it immediately ceases. It will stop immediately and no longer take effect. So you're going to want to target certain enemies that have during effects to get their effects out of the way for the remainder of the combat. Then next, we've got this Total War Spore. That is a cool name. He's a level 2 enemy, and he has an after effect. So this is going to take place afterwards in the resolve phase of the round, but it's worth reading now. It says, roll the 3 weakest dice committed this engagement, and if you roll at least 2 hits, you're going to banish a purple die. Your purple dice next to your red die are your strongest dice, so that is no good. So you're going to want to be careful about that. And then finally, we can look at what items we're going to get. The Parablight is going to give us a stun gun. It's a one-time use item that says discard 1 level 2 enemy from this engagement. Well, there is a level 2 enemy right here, but that's not going to be able to use for this engagement because, as you'll see, you'll get these rewards in the resolve phase after. But we'd be able to use this in the future for a future combat. That'd be really nice to be able to just discard the stun gun and then discard a level 2 enemy from a future engagement. And then for the Total War Spore, he has an item called Scorched Moon Policy, which is a continuous effect. We're going to get -1 to our recover when gained, and then at the end of each strategy phase, you return all committed misses. So all the dice that we roll that we committed, which would normally stay committed and then be exhausted, which I'll explain in a moment, we'd actually get those back. So that's pretty cool. So what we're going to do here, guys, is we're going to try to focus fire this guy since he's got this really gnarly ability that says each enemy can have only 1 die color applied to them. And you can see he's got 3 health and he does 1 damage. And then this guy's got 5 health and does 3 damage. And you know what? Now that I think about it, we only have 3 health. So if we don't kill this guy, we're going to lose the game. So we're going to go ahead and commit dice here. It's worth mentioning too, your recover number, your green die down here, stat die, that's going to tell you how many dice you can get back during the recover dice step in the resolve phase. So we'll get to there in a moment and this will make more sense. So first, we're going to decide how many dice we want to roll. Considering we can only apply 1 color die to each of these guys, we probably want to roll maybe 1 of each color. So I'm going to roll 1 of each color. Here we go. And we're going to give them a roll. Okay, so we're committing these dice. These dice are now committed. They have to stay over here in this section. And now we're going to roll dice. And then we're going to apply dice. And oh my goodness. Okay, so we rolled 1 miss, as you can see on the yellow dice. And then we rolled 4 hits over this way. So I think I'm going to apply all 3 of these hits. It's now the apply step. We've committed dice, we've rolled them, and now we can apply them. I'm going to apply these 3 hits to the Parablight. So you put the dice on the card. Each one of these is 1 hit, so it does 1 damage, and he's got 3 health, so we have taken down the Parablight. So now we can turn him to the side, and now his During effect, that each enemy can only have 1 die color applied to them, that no longer pertains. That is no longer in effect, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. So now, that was 1 phase. That was 1 strategy phase. So we check our strategy stat. We've got 3, which means that we can take 2 more strategy phases after this one, where we will repeat that process. We'll commit dice by choosing dice from our dice pool. We'll add them to our already committed dice over here. We'll roll those dice, and then we'll apply them to enemies. Cool. So, okay, there's our second strategy phase. We need to kill this guy. So I want to roll more dice. I think I'm going to roll these weaker dice here, because we're only going to be able to get 3 back. So let's go ahead and roll these, and that'll make sense in just a moment why that's important. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. We rolled a ton of misses, dudes. That is not good. That is not good. Now, I like always re-rolling the red die if I don't get a crit, because you're always going to get a hit with the red die, because 5 sides are hits and 1 side is a crit. So we're going to try again. We've committed these dice, so we have to roll these again. We have to keep these dice committed, and I can choose to add more dice to it if I want to. And you know what? I think I'm going to add another purple. Yeah, I'm going to add another purple. All right, here we go. We're going to go ahead and roll. We need 5. Okay, and we did not get it, unfortunately. We only got 3. So in this case, guys, we would actually lose the game. We would actually end up taking 3 damage and lose the game, but I'm not going to get too ahead of myself here. So we would apply dice. We could apply this 3 damage. That is not enough to take this guy down. And then we've got these 3 misses over here. So now we're going to move into the resolve phase. And the first part of the resolve phase is suffer damage. So we would suffer any damage on enemies that had not been defeated. In this case, we would take 3 damage. We've only got 3 health. And Valkyrie Mark 7 would be donezo, and we would lose the game. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty anomalous. That doesn't typically happen, but that's the way it is. At least you could just reshuffle everything up and go again. So in this case, we would lose the game, but let's say that we didn't. Let's say that we did actually manage to hit this guy. Let's say that we rolled a crit on this green die. So we did 2, 3, 4, 5 damage, and let's just say that we did take this guy down. So what would happen at this point is now we would move into suffering damage. Both enemies have been defeated. We would take no damage, so we get to continue. And then you trigger after effects. And again, the after effects are the effects that have these 2 little arrows pointing off to the right. So we would trigger this effect. And again, you trigger it whether you defeated the enemy or not. So if you defeated them or you didn't, it's always going to trigger. In this case, it says, roll the 3 weakest dice committed this engagement. Okay, and then it says, if you roll at least 2 hits, banish a purple. So these 2 yellow and a green are the weakest dice that were committed. So we're going to roll these. And we only rolled 1 hit, so we don't have to banish a purple. Had we rolled 2 or more hits, we would have had to banish one of these purple dice. And banish means that the die is completely removed from the game. It's not exhausted, but completely removed from the game entirely, and you can never get it back for that playthrough. Fortunately, we didn't roll that. So after resolving the after effects, you move into the exhaust dice phase. So we would take all committed dice and we would put them over here in an exhaust pile over this way. And then you get to recover dice. So you would check your recover stat. It is 3, and we get to recover 3 of these dice. So I'm going to pick the 3 strongest ones, the red and the 2 purple, and then I can add those back to my dice pool over this way to be used in future rounds, in future strategy phases. Then we would gain any item rewards. So in this scenario where we defeat both enemies, we would get to gain both of these item rewards here, and you can set them in your inventory. And here, I'll move this over just to make a little bit more room, and you'll set them here in your inventory, and you can use these whenever you want. We've got this one-time use card that we would discard whenever we decide to use it. And we've got our continuous effect card here that'll last for the rest of the game. And of course, whatever your strategy number is, that's how many items you can hold in your inventory. So right now our strategy is 3, so we can hold up to 3 items in our inventory. If you ever collect another item or another reward item, you can decide to just either discard it, or you can decide to put it into your inventory and discard one of your current items. Also, you never have to take item rewards if you don't want to. If you defeat an enemy and you don't want that particular reward for whatever reason, you can choose to just discard it off to the side. In a scenario where an enemy lives, let's say that the scenario went like this, where we defeated this guy, but this guy lives, he would deal 1 damage to us. So you would tick your health down by 1, like so. And then any undefeated enemies and also defeated enemies, if you don't want their loot, you would set them in a discard pile. So undefeated enemies, you're never going to get their reward. They would always get discarded. And for defeated enemies, as just mentioned, you can decide if you want to get them as an item reward or if you want to discard them to the discard pile over this way. So in either case, let's just say that we got these as rewards here, like so. These dice would remain exhausted. They are now in an exhaust pile, and you'll have to try to regain those on future turns if you want to. And then finally, for the resolve phase, we're going to move into the cleanup phase. And that only has 2 little sections, which is you discard all active cards, which we just did. So if there are any enemies left out on the board that you didn't defeat, or items that you don't want from those enemies, you discard them as just mentioned. And then you discard 1 non-mandatory enemy from the top of a stack. So you cannot discard one of the orange mandatory enemies. It's got to be one of these yellow guys over this way. You have to discard one of those from the top of the stack, and you just choose whichever one you want. So we'll just say in this case, oh, that guy's going to give me an extra enemy. And of course, you're going to want to read their effects too to see if, how they're going to play in with one another. But just for time's sake, I would say, okay, I'm going to discard this guy over this way. And then you flip the next card over. And then you go to the next round, which is the activation phase. And you start all over again. You would take this guy, since he is a mandatory enemy. You'd set him down this way. He doesn't have any skulls. So then you'd move into the engagement phase, which is the strategy phase. You'd commit dice. So he's got 4 health. We'll just grab a few dice. You roll the dice. You apply the dice, however many hits you want to roll. You can commit more dice to the pool if you want to. And any committed dice have to remain there. You'd roll those. We did 2 more damage. There we go. We took down the Berserker. We turn him to the side. And then if we wanted to, we could get his instant reward of +2 health. So we'd increase our health by 2 up to 4, like so. And then this guy would get discarded over this way. And then we would move into the suffer damage step, but there's no enemies left. We suffer no damage. Then after effects, there aren't any enemies there. Actually, before I get ahead of myself, he does have an after effect, which is count the total number of applied dice. So there were 4. And then you discard that many cards from the tops of any stacks one at a time. Okay, so we would say we discard 1. This guy's going to give us another enemy. We discard 2. He'll give us another enemy, 3. And we'll get rid of this guy also, 4. Like so. Cool. So we discard all of those. We've met the requirement for the after effect here on this enemy. And then we would exhaust dice. So all of these dice would get exhausted. Then we would recover dice. We can recover up to 3. So we'd get back a red and 2 purple. Like so. There we go. And then we would gain any item rewards, which we did. We gained the 2 health. So I got a little bit ahead of myself there. You gain their item reward after the fact. We would gain 2 health, then discard this guy over this way, and then go to the cleanup. We discard all the active cards, and then discard 1 non-mandatory enemy from the top of the stack. Let's just say we chose this guy. Flip this over, and you continue on like that. And of course, you're trying to complete all of your missions from left to right if you want less enemies at the boss, and you'll be exhausting your dice, regaining your dice, all the way till the end of the game until you reach the boss. Now, the way that you reach the boss is you have to get through one of these stacks of cards. So once one of these stacks of enemy cards runs completely out of enemies, you have the option of now facing the top card of the boss deck. You don't have to, but you can if you want to. You could continue to keep going through the other enemy stacks, and sometimes you want to. Sometimes you want to get more items to prepare yourself for the boss if you have too many exhausted dice. But once you do that, you can go ahead and fight the boss once one of the stacks is gone. Once all 3 of the stacks are gone, you have to fight the boss. So once you choose to fight the boss or are forced to fight the boss when all 3 stacks are gone, you'd flip the top card of the boss stack over. In this case, we'd be fighting the Swarm Lord. So you'd set him up down here. And then you would check here. He gets +3. So he gets 3 more enemies. And let's just say for the sake of the tutorial that we completed the first 2 missions, but we didn't manage to complete the 3rd one. We would have to take enemies off the top of these stacks and add them to our engagement here. So we would go 1, we'd go 2, and if there are any mandatory enemies, you'd have to add those. So like if we had an orange guy, if we had a mandatory enemy on top of the stack, we would have to choose him over him. It's also worth mentioning too that any enemies during the boss engagement that have skulls on them, they do not trigger more enemies to enter the fight, which is good. Otherwise, that would get completely out of control. Cool. And then we managed to complete 2 of our missions, and there was 1 left over that we didn't complete, which means we would have to add another enemy to the stack. So since we have 2 non-mandatory enemies, we'd get to choose one and add those down this way. Then we'd have to fight all of those guys. So of course, you'd read the boss's special ability. You'd see how much health he has, how much damage he does. And then you basically go through the rounds the same as you would otherwise in a normal engagement round. Except you do not have to defeat all of these enemies. You only have to defeat the boss in order to beat the game. But it's worth noting that at the end of any round, any dice that are applied to enemies, if you didn't deal enough damage to them to defeat them, those dice will not remain there. They will be exhausted as normal during the exhaust dice step. So you're going to have to go through another round and try to fight them again. And essentially the way it works is instead of like a normal round of play during the game before you get to the boss, any enemies that you don't defeat, they normally deal their damage to you and then they get discarded. In the boss fight, any enemies that you don't defeat do not get discarded. They stay in play and combat continues until you either defeat the boss or you lose all of your HP and lose the game. So that is it. If you manage to defeat the boss and take down all of their HP and defeat them, you have won the game. That is it, guys. So that is the tutorial for 20 strong, specifically with the Solar Sentinel deck here, guys. I cannot recommend this game enough. It is super, super fun. There's so many cool combinations and synergies with the enemies with all their different effects. Tons of cool reward items that you can get that help you strategize throughout the game, and just using your dice wisely and trying to strategize which dice you should use, how much of them, when you should use them, how they factor into the current effects on the enemies on the table at the time. And then, of course, all of the missions add another layer of complexity to the game. And you've got 6 different characters to choose from, which is going to help a lot with the replayability. And yeah, they have their own effects. They have their own stats. Really, really great stuff right there, guys. So can't recommend this one enough, dudes. I will put a link down in the description below so you can head over to the chiptheory.com website and pick up your own copy of 20 Strong if you want to. This video is not sponsored in any way whatsoever. I just really love the game. And once again, huge shout out to Trouble for sending the game over, man. I really, really appreciate it, dude. This game is fantastic. And yeah, like I've already said several times, I cannot recommend it enough, guys. Highly, highly recommend checking this one out and picking it up. And I will have playthroughs coming in the very near future of the game if you want to see a full playthrough of the game. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, guys, if this video helped you out, be sure to leave a like, hit that subscribe button, and click the bell so you can be notified every time I upload a brand new video. And until the next one, guys, have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next video.